Hello, buddy. Mm. All right. Welcome to the Mikestand, everybody. Today is Friday, February the 21st, 2025. So we're at the end of the third week of February. I hope everybody's had a good week this week. We head in the weekend. Another nightly dose of niche news. So before I do talk about what we're going to be going over tonight, friendly reminder, of course, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention that we talk about, feel free to comment and or ask a question, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. The Go Bots, the Go Bots, the Go Bots, the Go Bots. Do 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 do. Do, 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 do. All right, so let's see now. Well, considering that one thing I do talk about tonight is probably quite a bit lengthy, I think I'll go ahead and try to get started a little early here, a little earlier than usual. I usually wait at least till the 3 minute mark to kind of talk about what's on tap, but I guess I'll do it right now. It looks like we have at least one other person here. So, so tonight we're going to be looking back on the life and career of animator Fred Tex Avery. Of course, his career started in the late 20s and went all the way through to 1980. Among the companies he worked for throughout his illustrious career, he primarily worked, of course, for Walter Lantz and MGM, but he also had some stints with Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera as well. So we're going to be looking back on his career. You know, he was instrumental in a number of different characters, including like Droopy, Scrooge Squirrel, Bug Bunny. So with that being said, let me just do one more thing here, and then we will probably get right to it. And of course, we will have the wrestling wrap up and this day meets history as well. To all right. So with that being said, let me try one more thing here. All right. All right. So with that being said, here, why don't we go ahead and get started then? Alrighty then. All right. So as we said, we're gonna take a look back on the life and career of Tex Avery. All right. So he was born Frederick Bean Tex Avery, born February 26, 1908. Um, Passed away August 26, 1980, which would have made him about 72 when he passed on. Was an American animator, cartoonist, director and voice actor. He was known for directing and producing animated cartoons during the golden age of American animation. His most significant work was for the Warner Brothers and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer studios, where he was crucial in the creation and evolution of famous animated characters such as Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Elmer Fudd, Droopy, Scurry Squirrel, the Wolf, Red Hot Riding Hood, and George Jr. As well, of course, he also had some significant time with Walter Lantz Promotions as well. So, he gained influence for his technical innovation, directorial style, and brand of humor. Avery's attitude toward animation was opposite that of Walt Disney and other conventional family cartoons at the time. Avery's cartoons were known for their sarcastic, ironic, absurdist, irreverent, and sometimes sexual tone and nature. Yeah, in fact, they even had a cartoon show, I think, in the 90s solely dedicated to his style. Some of you probably saw it on Cartoon Network before. It's only that the Wacky World of Tex Avery, I believe is what it was called. They focused on sight gags, surrealist humor and pacing, racial stereotypes, and violent humor with wacky characters who broke the fourth wall. Early life and education. Avery was born to Mary Augusta Jessie Nee Bean, 1886 to 1931, which would have made her about 45, it looks like, when she passed on, and George Walton Avery, 1867 to 1935, so I would have made him 68 when he passed, in Taylor, Texas. I guess hence the Tex name. His father was born in Alabama, and his mother was born in Chickasaw County, Mississippi. Avery graduated in 1926 from North Dallas High School. A popular catchphrase at his school was, "What's up, Doc?" I guess that's where Bugs got his famous catchphrase, which he later used for Bugs Bunny in the 1940s. Interested in becoming a newspaper cartoonist, he took a 3-month summer course at the Chicago Art Institute, but left after a month. His animation career. On January 1st, 1928, which I believe that would have made him about 19 at that time, Avery arrived in Los Angeles. He spent the next few months working in menial jobs. According to animation historian Michael Barrier, these jobs included working in a warehouse, working on the docks at night, loading fruits and vegetables, and painting cars. He began his animation career when hired by the Winkler Studio, named after producer Margaret J. Winkler, and later known as Screen Gems. Of course, that's a company that originally had the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit property as well, and eventually brought in Charles Mintz and would be distributed by Columbia Pictures. Alright, so he was an inker, inking cells for animated short films in the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit series. The character had been created by Walt Disney. Avery then moved to a new studio, Universal Cartoon Studios, later known as Walter Lantz Productions. He was again employed as an inker, but moved rapidly up in the company's hierarchy. By 1930, Avery had been promoted to the position of animator. Avery continued working at the Walter Lantz studio into the early 1930s. He worked on most of the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons from 1931 to 1935. He is shown as animator, quote unquote, on the original title card credits on the Oswald cartoons. He later claimed to have directed 2 cartoons during this time. Now, mind you, he would also be asked at times during this period to at times voice Oswald as well. It would, usually go back and forth between him and Walter Lantz and a few other voice actors and actresses, depending upon how they were doing Oswald at the time. Accident to eye. During some office horseplay at the Lantz studio, a thumbtack or paperclip flew into Avery's left eye and caused him to lose sight in that eye. So remember, kids, don't mess around in the office because that's exactly what could happen. Something like that could happen. Some speculate it was his lack of depth perception that gave him his unique look at animation and bizarre directorial style. But it did not stop his creative career. The incident is described in some detail by Barrier, based in part on old interviews with Avery. Part of the typical crude horseplay at the Universal Studio was using a rubber band or a paper spitball to target the back of a colleague's head. So what would have likely happened is when he turned around, it got him in the eye or something like that. Probably just ended up turning around right at the wrong time. An animator called Charles Hastings decided to take the game one step further, and by using a wire paperclip. Instead, Avery heard one of his colleagues telling him to look out. He reacted by turning around. Instead of the back of his head, the paperclip hit Avery in his left eye. Instantly lost the use of his eye. Ouch. That's not good. See, now maybe if they hadn't been messing around in the first place, but some people, well, part of the reason why I decided to do, there was an article on MeTV Tunes today where they were, I guess, talking about that specific incident, and I figured, after that incident, I'd also just go ahead and do the Avery profile here with that article, but then I saw that when I looked at Wikipedia page here for it, this is going to take quite a bit of time to get through. So that's why I decided just go straight into the Avery profile instead. So anyway, continuing on with this article. From inker to storyboards. As an animator, Avery worked under director Bill Nolan. Nolan reportedly delegated work to Avery. Whenever Avery had to animate a sequence, Nolan's instructions for a scene involving Oswald became chased by bees, or involving Oswald being chased by bees, were reportedly simple. He would describe in which direction Oswald was running, in parentheses here, right to left in quotes, and for how many feet. The rest of the details were left up to Avery. Avery started handing out work to other animators working under Nolan. Avery wanted still greater control over the creative process, served as a de facto director for a couple of films. Based on Avery's recollections, here is a description of how this happened. He was submitting sight gags for use in the short films. Some of them were used in the actual film. Some funny ones were left out. He wanted to somehow get all his gags in the finished film. So he asked Nolan to let him create the entire storyline for a film. Nolan instructed Avery to not only draw the storyboard, but also to work on the timing and the layout on his own. Avery completed 2 films using this process. An older Avery recalled that both films were terrible, though they got accepted for release. So that again goes to show you we also saw a few weeks ago. Speak up for yourself, and you think good things will happen, right? Another example we've seen in the last few weeks where an animator stuck up for themselves and won out. Avery was reportedly displeased with his salary and had started giving up on his work. After about 6 weeks of substandard work, his superiors let him go. In April 1935, Avery lost his job at Universal Studios. Termite Terrace. Later in 1935, Avery applied for a job at Leon Schlesinger Productions, in parentheses, the company later known as Warner Brothers Cartoons, in parentheses. Avery reportedly managed to convince producer Leon Schlesinger that he was an experienced director, a false claim. In Avery's own words, quote, "Hey, I'm a director. Hell, I was no more a director than nothing. But with my loud mouth, I talked him into it." Again, a little chicanery there, but I guess it worked for him, I guess, right? Let's see. By 1935, when Avery was hired, the Schlesinger studio had only 2 full-time regular film directors, Fritz Frayling and Jack King. Avery became the 3rd regular director. The staff of the Schlesinger studio had become too large to be housed in a single building at the Warner Brothers backlot on Sunset Boulevard. The new Avery unit of the studio was granted their own building, a 5-room bungalow. The unit staff dubbed their quarters Termite Terrace due to its significant termite population. The Termite Terrace later became the nickname for the entire Schlesinger Warner Brothers studio, primarily because Avery and his unit were the ones who defined what became known as quote, the Warner Brothers cartoon, unquote. Avery was granted exclusive use of 4 animators: Bob Clampett, Chuck Jones, Sid Sutherland, and Virgil Ross. The first animated short film produced by this unit was Gold Diggers of 49 in 1935. The 3rd Looney Tunes film starring Beans was also featured in the film's title card, signifying that he was the intended protagonist. The film had a Western setting and cast Beans as a gold miner. Also featured in the film was a redesigned Porky Pig making his second appearance. The Avery unit was assigned to work primarily on the black and white Looney Tunes instead of the Technicolor Merry Melodies, but was allowed to make color Merry Melodies beginning with Page Miss Glory from 1936. So I guess it worked out. Avery stopped using Beans following Gold Diggers of 49, but continued using Porky as a star character. According to Michael Barrier, Beans was more of a straight man. However, Porky had to be redesigned again. Early Porky was decidedly pig-like in appearance. Michael Barrier's description, Porky was very fat, had small eyes, and a large snout, and pronounced jowls. He was like a porcine version of Roscoe Arbuckle, starting with Porky the Rainmaker in 1936, his fourth animated short starring Porky. Avery introduced a cuter version of Porky. The new design gave Porky more prominent eyes and a smaller snout. The jowls were replaced by chubby cheeks. Porky's body now had a rounder shape. Its defining trait was not fatness but softness. Barrier notes that the new design by Avery departed from the Disney-ish realism in the previous drawing style. Porky became a less realistic pig and looked more like a cartoon character. I guess more like an anthropomorphic pig. What you would think an anthropomorphic pig would probably look like. Yeah, we can. All right. So, anyways, back to the article here. According to Martha Segal, Avery was one of the few directors to visit the ink and paint department, where he would answer questions and was always in good humor, as he liked to see how his cartoons were developing. When some of the artists humorously criticized the wild action in his animated shorts, Avery would take time to explain his rationale. He recalled that while working at Warner Brothers, the animators had a great deal of liberty and were subject to very little censorship. Creation of Looney Tunes stars. Avery, with the assistance of Clampett, Jones, and new associate director Frank Tashlin, laid the foundation for a style of animation that rivaled the Walt Disney Studio as the leader in animated short films, and created a group of cartoon characters that are still known today. Avery, in particular, was deeply involved. He crafted gags for the shorts and sometimes provided the voices for them, including his trademark belly laugh, and held such control over the timing of the shorts that he would add or cut frames out of the final negative if he felt a gag's timing was not quite right. Porky's Duck Hunt, 1937, introduced the character of Daffy Duck, who possessed a new form of lunacy and zaniness that had not been seen before in animated cartoons. Daffy was an almost completely crazy, quote, damn fool duck, unquote, who frequently bounced around the film frame in double speed, screaming, hoo hoo, in a high-pitched, sped up voice provided by voice artist Mel Blanc, who, with this cartoon, also took over providing the voice of Porky Pig. Avery directed two more Daffy Duck cartoons, Daffy Duck and Egghead, and Daffy Duck in Hollywood. Egghead was a character inspired by comedian Joe Penner, and first appeared in Avery's Egghead Rides Again. Now, Egghead was kind of an early prototype for Elmer Fudd. That's what's believed, is that Egghead was kind of the early prototype of what we would get in Elmer Fudd. Moving on to the next paragraph here. Little Red Walking Hood first introduced the early character of Elmer Fudd as a character mostly taking part of some running gag. Egghead was a prototype, and then they did bring Elmer Fudd in. Elmer, in the early form, had green clothes, a brown bowler hat, and a pink nose. He was also named Elmer on the lobby cards for the Isle of Pingo Pongo, 1938. His second appearance, Cinderella Meets Bella, 1938. His third appearance, and was fully called Elmer Fudd on screen. In A Feud There Was, 1938. Also, his fourth appearance, Elmer even appears on every merchandise and in the early Looney Tunes books in 1938 1939, and was later promoted as Egghead's brother on the Vitaphone release sheet for Cinderella Meets Bella, because Elmer was also voiced by Danny Webb in his Joe Penner voice that was also used for Egghead. And eventually, Arthur Q. Bryan would eventually take over as the voice of Elmer a bit later here. Ben Hardaway, a guy who would later go on to work with Walter Lantz. Cal Dalton and Chuck Jones directed a series of shorts that featured a Daffy Duck like rabbit created by Ben Bugs Hardaway. As is the case with most directors, each puts his own personal stamp on the character's stories. The overall feel of a short. So each of these cartoons treated the rabbit differently. The next to try out the rabbit, known around Termite Terrace as Bugs Bunny, named after Hardaway, was Avery. Since the recycling of storylines among the directors was commonplace, A Wild Hare was a double throwback. Avery had directed the short Porky's Duck Hunt featuring Porky Pig, and which also introduced Daffy Duck. Hardaway remade it as Porky's Hare Hunt, introducing the rabbit. So Avery went back to the hunter and prey framework, incorporating Jones's Elmer's candid camera gag for gag, and altering the new design of Elmer Fudd, polishing the timing, and expanding the Groucho Marx smart aleck attitude already present in Porky's Hare Hunt. He made Bugs a kind of slick, Brooklyn-esque rabbit, who was always in control of the situation. Avery had stated that it was very common to refer to folks in Texas as Doc, much like pal, dude, and bud. A wild hare, Bugs adopts his colloquialism when he casually walks up to Elmer, who is hunting wabbits, and whilst carefully inspecting a rabbit hole, shotgun in hand, the first words out of Bugs' mouth is a coolly calm, quote, "What's up, Doc?" unquote. Audiences reacted riotously to the juxtaposition of Bugs' nonchalance and the potentially dangerous situation. Quote, "What's up, Doc?" instantly became the rabbit's catchphrase. Originally, Avery wanted Bugs Bunny to be called Jackie Rabbit, because he hunted for jackrabbits when he was a kid. Numerous suggestions for names came up, but publicist Rose Horsley liked the name that was on Thorson's model sheet, saying that it was cute and they will, quote, "play it two ways," unquote. Avery argued on his stance for the name, quote, "Jackie Rabbit," unquote, saying that mine's a rabbit, a tall, lanky, mean rabbit. He isn't a fuzzy little bunny. He also said the name Bugs Bunny sounded like a Disney character. Nevertheless, Schlesinger settled on Bugs Bunny. Avery ended up directing only 4 Bugs Bunny cartoons: A Wild Hare, Tortoise Beats Hare, The Heckling Hare, and All This and Rabbit Stew. During this period, he also directed a number of one-shot shorts, including travelogue parody, The Isle of Pingo Pongo, which is the second cartoon to feature an early character that evolved into Elmer Fudd. Fractured Fairy Tales, The Bear's Tale, Hollywood character films, Hollywood Steps Out, and characters featuring Bugs Bunny clones, The Crackpot Quail. Avery's tenure at the Schlesinger studio ended in late 1941 when the producer and he quarreled over the ending to The Heckling Hare. In Avery's original version, Bugs and the hunting dog were to fall off a cliff 3 times, making it an early example of the wild take. According to a DVD commentary for the cartoon, historian and animator Greg Ford explained that the problem Schlesinger had with the ending was that just before falling off the 3rd time, Bugs and the dog were to turn to the screen with Bugs saying, quote, "Hold on to your hats, folks. Here we go again," unquote. A punchline to a potentially risque joke of the day. Um, However, Barrier uncovered a typewritten dialogue transcript of the cartoon that mentions the three falls at the end, but the hold on to your hats line is absent. And the rest of the dialogue in the cartoon transcribed accurate in the cartoon transcribed accurately. This inferred that Avery either misremembered or embellished the story, and Schlesinger made the cut not because of any risque content, but because he did not think that it was funny that Avery was killing Bugs 3 times, and the ending simply dragged on for too long. The Hollywood Reporter reported on the quarrel on July 2nd, 1941. Avery was slapped with a 4-week unpaid suspension. Speaking of animals, while at Schlesinger, Avery created a concept of animating lip movement to live action footage of animals. Schlesinger was not interested in Avery's idea, so Avery approached Jerry Fairbanks, a friend of his, who produced the Unusual Occupations series of short subjects for Paramount Pictures. Fairbanks liked the idea, and the Speaking of Animals series of shorts was launched. When Avery left the Schlesinger studio in 1941, he went to work for Paramount to work on the first 3 shorts in the series before joining Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM. The series continued without him, lasting 7 years. Avery at MGM. I think that was his longest tenured time, was when he was working at MGM. So, on September 2nd, 1941, the Reporter announced that Avery had signed a 5-year contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, where he was to form his own animation unit and direct shorts in Technicolor. By 1942, Avery was in the employ of MGM, working in their cartoon division under the supervision of Fred Quimby. Avery felt that Schlesinger had stifled him. When asked if he missed the Looney Tunes characters, he responded, quote, "Sometimes, but I don't miss anything else. MGM is a heck of a better place to work in every way, and the people here are just as great," unquote. At MGM, Avery's creativity reached its peak. His cartoons became known for their sheer lunacy, breakneck pace, and penchant for playing with the medium of animation and film in general that few other directors dared to approach. Some interesting stuff there. MGM also offered him larger budgets and a higher quality production level than the Warner Brothers studio. Plus, his unit was filled with talented ex-Disney artists such as Preston Blair and Ed Love. These changes were evident in Avery's first short released by MGM, Blitzwolf, an Adolf Hitler parody of the Three Little Pigs story, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Short Subject Cartoons. In 1942, Avery's cartoons at MGM somewhat felt like Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoons done during that same time period. At Looney Tunes, at Warner Brothers, albeit the Brothers series gained more popularity than Avery's MGM cartoons. Let's see. Avery's best-known MGM character debuted in Dumbhounded, 1943. Droopy, originally called Happy Hound, was a small, calm, slow-moving, and slow-talking dog who was always worn out in the end, whatever difficulties he faced. He also created a series of risque cartoons, beginning with Red Hot Riding Hood, also 1943, featuring a sexy female star who never had a set name, but has been unofficially referred to as Red by fans. Her visual design and voice varied somewhat between shorts. Other Avery characters at MGM included Screwy Squirrel and the Of Mice and Men inspired duo, Jordan Jr. Other MGM cartoons directed by Avery include Bad Luck Blackie, Cellbound, Magical Maestro, Lucky Dog, Ventriloquist Cat, and The King-Size Canary. Avery began his stint at MGM working with lush colors and realistic backgrounds, but he slowly abandoned this style for a more frenetic, less realistic approach. The newer, more stylized look reflected the influence of the up-and-coming UPA studio. The need to cut costs as budgets grew higher, and Avery's own desire to have reality behind and make cartoons that were not tied to the real world or of live action. During this period, he made a series of films that explored the technology of the future: The House of Tomorrow, The Car of Tomorrow, The Farm of Tomorrow, and TV of Tomorrow, spoofing common live-action promotional shorts of the time. Yeah, I think we've seen quite a few of them, particularly The House of Tomorrow one, on a few occasions. He also introduced a slow-talking wolf character, who was a prototype for MGM Associates Hanna-Barbera's Huckleberry Hound character, right down to the voice by Daws Butler. Right, continuing on here. Avery took a year sabbatical from MGM beginning in 1950 to recover from overwork, during which time Dick Lundy, recently arrived from the Walter Land studio, took over his unit and made one Droopy cartoon, as well as a string of shorts featuring Barney Bear. Avery returned to MGM in October 1951 and began working again. Avery's last two original cartoons for MGM were Deputy Droopy and Cellbound, completed in 1953. And released in 1955. They were co-directed by the Avery Unit animator Michael Law. Law began directing a handful of CinemaScope Droopy shorts on his own on March 1st, 1953. Avery's unit was terminated, and he was fired from MGM. Fred Quimby spoke of bringing back the unit, but in December of that year, Walter Lantz announced that Avery would be working for him. Of course, Walter Lantz and Avery had a previous history of working together, of course. Return to Walter Lantz Productions. Avery directed 4 cartoons for Walter Lantz Productions in 1954 to 1955. Crazy Mixed Up Pup, I'm Cold, and The Legend of Rockabye Point, in which he defined the character of Chilly Willy the Penguin. He brought his signature wild gags and fast pacing to the Lantz studio, and the Lantz cartoons received new energy and recognition. The Legend of Rockabye Point and Crazy Mixed Up Pup were nominated for Academy Awards. Avery had agreed to a salary and a percentage of the profits. He did not realize that his share came out of the net profits. Quote, I made about 4 cartoons for, in brackets, Lantz. Then I started thinking about the contract. I took it to an attorney, and he said, quote, oh, brother, you'll never get a dime out of this. You're getting charged for everything but the paving out in front of the studio. I was getting my percentage off the bottom instead of off the top. By the time the charges went in, why, my goodness, there was nothing left. So I gave up there. Avery left behind 3 new Chilly Willy storyboards, which were later made into cartoons by director Alex Lovey. Cascade Studios. Here's another long time Avery turned to animated television commercials at Cascade Studios, including those for Raid, 1950s through 1970s, which cartoon insects, confronted by the bug killer, screamed, Raid! And died flamboyantly. And Frito-Lay's controversial mascot, the Frito Bandito, Avery also produced ads for Kool-Aid fruit drinks, starring the Looney Tunes characters he had once helped create during his termite terrace days. Funny enough, the Cascade executives did not even know that he created the characters. During the 1960s and 1970s, Avery became increasingly reserved and depressed due to the suicide of his son and the breakup of his marriage. Although he continued to draw respect from his peers, after Cascade, he briefly animated commercials for his own company, Tex Avery Cartoons. From June to July 1973, Avery then went back to Cascade and closed the cartoon department in 1978. He had an offer from Fritz Frayling to write for DePatie Frayling Enterprises, but was not interested. For those of you who don't know, DePatie Frayling was the company that gave us the Pink Panther cartoons, like Pink Panther, the Inspector, and the Aardvark, those cartoons. Hanna-Barbera Productions. From 1979 until his death, his final employer was Hanna-Barbera Productions, where he wrote gags for Saturday morning cartoons such as the Droopy S. Quickie Koala. According to an interview by John Dunn in his diary, Avery did not like the late animation industry at the time, feeling that it lacked quality. Let's see. Innovation. Gary Morris described Avery's innovative approach. Quote, above all, in brackets, Avery steered the Warner Brothers house style away from Disney-esque sentimentality and made cartoons that appealed equally to adults, who appreciated Avery's speed, sarcasm, and irony, and to kids who liked the nonstop action. Disney's quote-unquote cute and cuddly creatures under Avery's guidance were transformed into unflappable wits like Bugs Bunny, endearing buffoons like Porky Pig, or dazzling crazies like Daffy Duck. Even the classic fairy tale, a market that Disney had cornered, was appropriated by Avery, who made innocent heroines like Little Red Riding Hood into sexy jazz babes, more than a match for any wolf. Avery, who endeared himself to intellectuals by constantly breaking through the artifice of the cartoon having characters leap out of the end credits, loudly object to the plot of the cartoon they were starring in, and speak directly to the audience. Directing style. Avery had developed a distinct signature style at Warner Brothers Studio, which had breakneck pacing, outlandish, over-the-top acting from his characters, and seemingly non-stop jokes and gags. Avery's style of directing encouraged animators to stretch boundaries of the medium to do things in a cartoon that could not be done in the world of live action film. An often quoted line about Avery's cartoons was, quote, in a cartoon you can do anything. He also performed a great deal of voice work in his cartoons, usually throwaway bits. He also occasionally filled in for Bill Thompson as Droopy. Personal life and death. 2 days after being fired from Universal in the spring of 1935, Avery married his girlfriend Patricia. She was also employed at Universal Studios as an inker. The newlyweds spent a long honeymoon in Oregon, but had to return to Los Angeles when they ran out of money. On Tuesday, August 26, 1980, Avery died of liver cancer at St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank, California, at the age of 72. At the time of his death, he was developing a character named Cave Mouse for a new Flintstone series. According to Chuck Jones, when watching a baseball game with another animator, Avery's last words were, quote, I don't know where animators go when they die, but I guess there must be a lot of them. They could probably use a good director, though, unquote. He's buried at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills. And I think we all know of his influence and legacy because we've seen his works throughout. But that's where I'm going to end it right there. So hopefully everybody got a lot out of that. So what we're going to do now, of course, we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap-up here real quick. We're going to, again, we're going to look back to last night's Ring of Honor and TNA shows and then look ahead to tonight's SmackDown. Also, look ahead to this weekend's Collision as well. That'll be on tomorrow night over the weekend here. So going back to last night's, let's see. First off, let's look back to last night's Ring of Honor show. As on last night's Ring of Honor show, which took place from the Ford Bend Epicenter in Rosenberg, Texas, taped back on February 8th. Wheeler Yuta defeated Fuego del Sol. Let's see, in a singles match. Abaddon defeated Rachel Ellering. In a 12-man tag match, the Outrunners teamed with the Von Erichs and Top Flight to defeat the team known as the Frat House of Griff Garrison, Jack Jameson, and Preston Vance, along with the premier athletes of Arya Davari, Tony Nese, and Mark. Actually, they had Mark Sterling get into the ring. That's interesting. Cole Carter was in their corner. Billy Starks defeated Layla Gray was in the corner of the Outrunners. Cole Carter was in the corner of the Frat House and Premier Athlete. Billy Starks defeated Heian in just over 4 minutes. Commander retained the Ring of Honor World Television title over Lee Johnson. The Gates of Agony of Bishop Khan and Toa Leona defeated Exodus Prime and Josiah Jean. And the main event was a 6-man trios match in which CMLL stars Barbaro Cavernario, Hechicero, and Soberano Jr. defeated Dark Panther, Fuego, and one half of the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, Sammy Guevara. Yeah. So that all happened on last night's Ring of Honor show. Now moving ahead to look back at last night's live Impact show. See, the show opened up with the Rascals with Ace Austin in their corner defeating NXT's Tyson DuPont and Tyreek Igwe with Wesley in their corner. Lei Ying Ling defeated Rosemary. In a no disqualification match, JDC defeated Leon Slater. In a non-title match, Masha Slamovich defeated Mila Moore. And I believe after this match, Tessa Blanchard confronted Masha, I believe. And in the main event, saw making their saw basically three people making, I believe, their first appearance in TNA as Elijah from the WWE fame, teaming with TNA World Champion Joe Hendry to defeat the Eddie and Primo, or Eddie and Orlando, the Colognes. So that all happened on last night's show. Now, getting ready to look ahead to tonight's SmackDown. on the USA Network. On tonight's SmackDown from New Orleans, from the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana, Drew McIntyre is set to take on Jimmy Uso, a one-on-one match. The tag team match, LA Knight and R-Truth take on Carmelo Hayes and The Miz. In a non-title match, Speed champion Candice LeRae will be taking on WWE Women's Champion Tiffany Stratton. In a match for the WWE tag team titles, DIY of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano take on Pretty Deadly of Elton Prince and Kit Wilson. Naomi takes on Liv Morgan. And the main event will see Bloodline duo of Jacob Fatu and Solo Sikoa taking on Braun Strowman and Damian Priest. So that's all going down on tonight's SmackDown. And now looking ahead to Saturday's Collision, tomorrow's Collision, coming from the Arizona Financial Theater in Phoenix, Arizona. Brody King will be answering the open challenge of Max Caster. The Beast Mortos will be taking on Hologram. Queen Aminata will be taking on former TBS champion Julia Hart in a match for the AEW World Trios titles. The Blackpool Combat Club of Claudio Castagnoli, Pac, and Wheeler Yuta take on TNT champion Daniel Garcia and 2.0 of Matt Menard and Angelo Parker. The team of Sky High, the Avion brothers, Mondo and Robbie, take on the Murder Machines, Don Callis' Murder Machines of Lance Archer and Brian Cage. Current New Japan Strong Openweight champion Gabe Kidd takes on the Butcher. And the main event will see Chris Jericho defend the Ring of Honor World title against Bandito on tomorrow night's show. We'll have all the results of tonight and tomorrow night on Monday. So now that we're through all that. So with today being Friday, February the 21st, 2025, let's take a look back at this day in Nietzsche history. So, let me just see here. 2007, 2010. Let's see, that's from what, 2005, right? 2005 and 2020. All right. So, first off, we're going to head back 20 years ago today. And on this date 20 years ago today, back in 2005, Avatar: The Last Airbender premieres on Nickelodeon on this date back in 2005. So 20 years ago today, Avatar: The Last Airbender premieres on Nickelodeon. You know, some of the more recent, promotion of Avatar: The Last Airbender recently. It's been 20 years since it's been on television on Nickelodeon. So on this date 20 years ago, Avatar: The Last Airbender premiered on Nickelodeon. Now moving on to the next piece of niche history, moving ahead to 2007, which was 18 years ago today. On this day, 18 years ago today, the fifth and final issue of Hellstorm, Son of Satan, from Marvel's Max imprint, went on sale on this date back in 2007. So 18 years ago today, the fifth and final issue of Hellstorm, Son of Satan, from Marvel's Max imprint, went on sale on this date back in 2007. It sold for $3.99, 32 pages. The conclusion of the Equinox story, Written by Alexander Irvine, penciled by Russell Braun. Klaus Janson did the inking. Lettering was done by Joe Caramagna, and Julia Brusco did the coloring. There we go with that one. And now moving ahead to 2020, on this date in 2020. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, not yet. We have two more. Actually, not one more. On this date in 2010, which was 15 years ago today, this date in 2010, the WWE held its Elimination Chamber event from the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis, Missouri. On the show, let's see. At the show, let's see. The show saw in the main event Chris Jericho defeat the Undertaker, Rey Mysterio Jr., John Morrison, R-Truth, and then CM Punk in an Elimination Chamber to win the World Heavyweight Championship. The Miz defeated MVP to retain the United States Championship. So, in a match that was originally scheduled to be a WWE Divas Championship match, changed into a tag team match in which Michelle McCool and Lay Cole as they were known, defeated Maurice and Gail Kim. In a match for the WWE Intercontinental Championship, Drew McIntyre retained over Kane. And then the show opened up with an Elimination Chamber in which John Cena defeated Sheamus, Triple H, Randy Orton, Ted DiBiase Jr., and Kofi Kingston in the Elimination Chamber match to win the WWE Championship. Mr. McMahon, however, ordered another match in which Batista defeated John Cena to become the new WWE Champion. So that all happened in 2010 at the Elimination Chamber event there. Then moving on to the final piece of news, now moving ahead to 2020. On this date in 2020, the two anime movies premiered in Japanese theaters as Toei Animation's Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna and Studio Dean's The World's Greatest, let's see, get down to, and Studio Dean's The World's Greatest First Love Proposal arc, both premiered on this date back in 2000. So Toei's Digimon Adventures, Last Evolution Kizuna, and Studio Dean's The World's Greatest First Love Proposal arc, both premiered on this date back in 2020, 5 years ago. So with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. Hopefully everybody helped out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we got some more friendly people to engage. Of course, I'll have this up, so if you want to go back and watch anything and get caught up on the latest Neats news, feel free to do so. And I'll, this Sunday we'll be joined by Apex from Apex Comics. So we look back to comics that went on sale in April 1940. This week we'll be focusing in on Street Smith and United Feature Syndicate, primarily reading out of Shadow Comics Volume 1, Issue 4. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here on Sunday. Bye!